I noticed in your speech that one of your missions this week was some asks of the US government on sharing. What are you asking them to share?
Well, it's really trying to make sure that export facilitation around defence industry technology happens in the most seamless way, perhaps the most expeditious way possible. And obviously there is a significant amount of regulation, as there should be, which operates around this particular sector. But it's really important that if we are going to really take the opportunity of having much closer industrial bases between our two countries, if we're going to make the most of that opportunity, then we have to have a much more seamless and integrated pair of defence industries, and we really want to talk to the US about how we can do that.
Where are we building these submarines? Are they going to be built in Australia?
Well, what's really clear is that if we want to get the submarines as soon as we can, if we want to get those 8 built, that it's really important that we do develop a capability in Australia to build nuclear-powered submarines. In other words, we've got to make our contribution really through AUKUS to the totality of the industrial base between the 3 countries, Australia, the UK and the US. And so it's really important that we are walking down that path of building the industrial capability in Australia to build nuclear-powered submarines. And that's a huge opportunity for Australia's industrial base, particularly in South Australia, but it's something that we really need to do.
So that's not a guarantee, though, that they'll be built in Australia. You're saying if the capability doesn't hit where it needs to, we might have to build them.
I think inevitably we end up building nuclear submarines in Australia. That is the point that I'm trying to make, and it's actually developing that industrial base which will see us achieve this sooner.
And so on that, it's going to obviously take an increase in GDP, the percentage of GDP spending on defence. We heard Albanese say, the Prime Minister, in the lead up to the election that you were aiming for 2%. Is that still the case, and how do we afford that in the current economic climate?
Well, there are challenges, and it's right to point that out. I mean, we've come to power inheriting $1 trillion debt from the former coalition government. So it's right to observe that the federal budget going forward is under pressure because of that. But we've also made clear that defence spending is fundamentally important given the strategic circumstances, the complexity of those circumstances that we face right now, and we've committed to that spending being at 2%, and we understand that walking down the path of developing nuclear-powered submarines is going to be an expensive endeavour, and answering the question of cost will be an important part of the announcements that we ultimately make around all of this in the early part of next year.